Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Web3 Growth podcast. I'm your host, Esteban Ramirez, and today we're joined by TPan, who runs an absolute fire Substack, which aims to simplify Web3 growth strategies used by leading Web3 organizations. Welcome, TPan. How you doing?
Hey, Stefano. Thank you for having me. Excited to chat about Web3 growth and marketing. And having a great day so far.
Good. So cool. Let's dive right into it then. So tell us a little bit about your growth marketing background and then how you ended up in Web3.
Yeah, definitely happy to. So I have a background in growth and marketing related roles. I'm based out in the Bay Area, so right outside San Francisco. Have worked in Web2 tech for about a decade, larger tech companies that have IPO'd, as well as smaller startups, Series A, Series B, seed level, across a variety of industries: gaming, rideshare, health tech, fintech, edutech, etc. And during COVID, naturally had a lot more time spent at home. And as a result, naturally had more time spent online at home. And in early 2021, January 2021, I started hearing from other people online about a product called NBA Top Shot by Dapper Labs. Like many other people, I believe the cohort for that period of time for Top Shot was like literally hundreds of thousands, like several hundred thousand people and users. I was one of those people that really got caught in the wave. And from my sort of mindset and point of view, I think about things from sort of a growth and marketing lens naturally, because that is sort of my professional background. So when I learned about NBA Top Shot digital collectible trading cards from NBA superstars and NBA players, I just thought that was so obvious. And I thought that was so clear that that was going to be a thing. And at the time, the prices kept going up. It got a little ridiculous, frankly, and I got caught up in that excitement as those numbers sort of validated my hypothesis with the potential that you could be attending an NBA game. And right now we're sort of at the sort of kickoff, not kickoff, but the tip off, more specifically, of the NBA playoffs. So pretty timely that we're talking about this. But I sort of imagine like, hey, LeBron James or Steph Curry has a crazy play. You could, by the end of the game or even like a couple minutes after, mint that play. And that just felt like such a great direct to consumer and sort of product experience. And I think there's still a long ways to go, a couple years later from that, for that to like actually happen at scale and to that degree. But that sort of initially caught my fascination, my interest, and that sort of kicked off a passion that just has not really dwindled since. However, from Top Shot, went over to consumer-facing NFT communities on the Web3 front. And then that has sort of spread towards a broader interest in Web3 and crypto. And that also led me to start writing. I have a Substack writing about Web3 growth and marketing strategies, tactics, and interesting observations in the space. I try to keep it relatively lightweight, but go a little deeper than maybe your average newsletter. And that interest just has not waned ever since those early moments a little over 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's actually quite unique because most people that I speak to, they always say, oh, it's like DeFi is the route into crypto, either by XRP or Bitcoin or whatever. But you got in through NBA Top Shot, which is like really interesting. I got in through I think it was like Chainlink, something crazy. My friend just said, oh, by the way, have you heard of Chainlink? I was like, what is that? He's like, it's a crypto. And I'm like, what is a crypto? And then I just went into a rabbit hole, and that's how I got into it. But yeah, no, it's definitely like a unique way of getting into Web3. And you definitely do run a pretty cool Substack. I mean, we're going to talk about it now, actually. But yeah. So what's your overall feeling of Web3 growth then at the moment? And who do you think are some of the companies that are really leading the way with using on-chain stuff and blockchain tech and all that sort of good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Quick note about a lot of people entered from the DeFi space and, what a lot of folks call DeFi summer. I wish I got in from that because I think having a DeFi foundation is very, very solid. That's like truly a solid foundation. You really understand TradFi, DeFi, crypto much more holistically and much more deeply. And there's a lot of those elements that are starting to very clearly impact the sort of consumer side of NFTs. If you've ever heard of NFTFi, or more plainly put, borrowing or lending NFTs, earning tokens based on your NFTs, things like that. That's a very rich and growing market, and that's all based on DeFi, which is based on TradFi to some degree. So what I like to say is I'm swimming upstream now in regards to learning those aspects of the Web3 ecosystem, infrastructure, infra, DeFi, on top of all the interesting consumer things going on. So on the note of consumer, interesting brands doing innovative, creative things. So many, I think many of them generally are names we've heard of, I think to a degree, chicken or the egg, because they're doing innovative things, and also survival bias in regards to who's still around several years later. Some brands or some names have gone or waned, while others are still, doing strong and doing very innovative stuff. So, starting from the top, Yuga Labs initially 2 years ago, more or less from approximately this date, was just sort of a small group of folks that would just want to do something fun during COVID. And now it is, well, at least in terms of the last valuation, but probably still worth somewhere in the approximate range, $3-4 billion, maybe a little less now, but a multi-billion-dollar brand that has really sort of expanded the breadth of what an NFT collection can be. It's much more than just an NFT collection. It's a set of brands. It's a portfolio of brands. It's not just Bored Ape Yacht Club, as well as a lot of the sort of early stages of a gaming company. The new CEO, Daniel Allegre, was the ex-COO, so the ex-chief operating officer of Activision Blizzard, one of the largest gaming companies in the world, now leading a leading Web3 company and brand that is going to have a pretty heavy gaming bent to it. Also with their metaverse ambitions, going to be very interesting to see how they integrate it. They've been doing a lot of great stuff. Going to more of the mainstream non-Web3 native brands. I'm sure many folks have heard about what Starbucks is testing and experimenting with Starbucks Odyssey over the past few weeks, but this has already been sort of announced for several months now. Nike has launched their Dot Swoosh effort. So more of their like a hybrid virtual effort that is going to lean on blockchain technology. It's probably not going to go full on, decentralized Web3, et cetera, but there's going to be foundational elements that lean on blockchain, ownership, co-creation. Those are just terms that are going to be probably from an industry standpoint, as well as from a sort of consumer standpoint, a little bit more prevalent in the coming, I believe, weeks, months, and years. And what else? I think a fun one that I think if you're deeper on the consumer side of Web3, you're more familiar with, or you've seen waves being made there. I do not have one, but Pudgy Penguins is actually a very interesting case study of like a Web3 native brand doing very, very Web2 oriented sort of marketing strategies and tactics. So if you look at their playbook, it's nothing new. But then if you were to look up what Pudgy Penguins is, where can you get one, so to say, that's actually a very Web3 native process and foundation that they're built on. And of course, they are doing Web3 related efforts, but I think from a pure marketing and growth standpoint, it's quite Web2, and you wouldn't really be able to differentiate that. So that's a really interesting brand in which you think that you might sometimes think everyone's trying to do some very technically, complex, or like, we only cater towards a Web3 native audience, but there are brands that are going the other direction to get more towards a Web2 audience and in a much more approachable and friendly and sort of you wouldn't even know what type of brand they are way.
Yeah, I think you said something about Yuga there and I guess this relates to Pudgy Penguins as well. It's like, so if you think about it, Pudgy Penguins and Yuga as projects have not been like projects for very long. If you consider it in business terms, like how many years is that? 2 years or even less than that? Um,
Yeah, tops.
yeah, and they got to like billions of market cap. Like it makes me think, what cocktail of things did they do well to reach that level of success? Was it obviously that the market plays a big part in that? If you're in a bull market, then it's a lot easier to make noise, and especially if you time it right when you start. But it's impossible to time markets. You can get something like Yuga or like Pudgy Penguins. But what, in your opinion, on the growth side more than anything, do you think is the right cocktail of things that can make like this like huge projects like Pudgy Penguins and Yuga? I think it's something to do with culture as well. I think you have to get the culture right, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, that's actually a great point. I think a lot of people at this stage sort of forget about the culture, and there's a lot of different ways to manifest that, to show that, or even create and push your own culture in a way. And that is related to, I think it's a very broad and deep concept, but it's just related to fostering and brace for another buzzword, but the community itself, right? And the punchline there with culture is that every community has its own culture, right? Because a community is a group of individuals that band together with a common sort of set of norms, a common set of values, a common set of goals, even ways of greeting each other. If you're in Web3, you might have seen or heard the term GM, right? Good morning. That's used in the space a lot. And that's part of the sort of Web3 or NFT community, but also part of Web3 and NFT culture, right? That sort of slang or even that saying. So if we were to drill down to Pudgy Penguins or Yuga and going into community, there's a set of norms there. There's also a set of tools and or set of creative activations, for lack of a better word, that, let's just start with Yuga, that team and that company has done to enable a stronger culture, to enable a stronger community, right? Those concepts in of themselves are not new, are not novel, and that's what I want to make clear. Because a lot of what I like to point out, what I like to write is that, hey, this is a new playbook, but you know what? Playbooks have existed before, right? So it's not like people don't understand what a playbook is or a set of strategies or tactics, or like, hey, culture, community, like that's everywhere, right? It's not just like, hey, NFTs, so everything is brand new. I don't even understand it at all. It's taking the same playbook and putting a twist on it and rewriting aspects of it, right? So when we think about, as an example, what Yuga has done, and now we're seeing other major brands actually taking a page from that newer playbook, it's actually getting pretty interesting. So in the earlier days, what was unique about Yuga? They actually gave their holders commercial rights, right? Again, if you had a traditional Web2 brand or just brand in general, it doesn't even matter which web, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, who cares? Like giving away IP rights is crazy, right? Like if I built my own brand and I told my email subscribers or newsletter subscribers or Twitter followers, like, you could do whatever the hell you want with like this logo, or like I could give you a version of that thing and you could just do whatever you want with it. That's basically what Yuga did, right? It's not literally every single thing related to the Yuga brand they gave commercial assets, commercial IP rights, but they gave a lot, right? So if you owned Bored Ape 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you could have that be the face of your hamburger joint. And there is a hamburger joint based in Long Beach that is sort of Bored Ape, Mutant Ape themed. Or you could build, a water brand. You could create your own cell phone company. You could do whatever the heck you want, right? And that just traditionally has never really been done before. And that has been a community growth as well as a general marketing and growth strategy that has really led to a very large return in awareness in terms of people being like, oh my gosh, like I sort of want in, or at least I just want to see what's going to happen to this company and this brand. So what's actually really interesting, fast forward, let's say a year and a half, 2 years later, for example, with Nike, they acquired a very well-respected company and brought them into the fold, Artifact, and they have their own collection of clones, which is their sort of NFT sort of collection and what they call them. Artifact released full 3D files. I think maybe I don't remember the exact time, but several months ago, and they gave broad commercial rights to those holders as well. They could do anything they want with those 3D the 3D IP for their clones, right? Granted, there were some limitations. For example, they could not co-market their clone with another sneaker brand, as an example, right? You can't have your Nike Artifact clone doing some sort of partnership with Puma or Adidas, etc. But that really changed what it meant to, one, co-create. Again, I'm going to say that term because that's getting a lot more popular. You're going to see that everywhere in the coming months and years. Whether or not it's called that, there's going to be variations of that. And actually, as of last week, Adidas announced more details about their profile picture project. And guess what? Holders and owners of your Adidas, they call it alts, ALTS or alt, actually have commercial rights for that profile picture NFT as well, right? So you can really sort of see that inspiration and the sort of proliferation of that concept, where historically legal teams used to be like, oh my gosh, like we're going to do a fan art contest. No, that's going to end terribly. It's, someone's going to draw a dick pic and, put our logo on it, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, like you're right. We had to protect the brand at all costs. You guys flipped that script. And I think a lot of brands in careful ways are starting to think through, hey, what does it look like if we actually enable, empower, and enhance our community and give them a little bit more freedom to create and partner and market even with us where they can benefit too?
Yeah, I think there is a big shift in the creator economy was big already, but I think it's going to be even bigger now, that especially with AI and stuff like that. I mean, what's that famous? I always forget the name. It's a famous game that's free to play, and they've launched their own creator version of it as well. It's like a survival shooting game.
Survival shooting game. Okay.
Yeah. Let me just Google it, because like it's like one of the most famous. It's from Epic Games.
From Epic Games. It's not Left 4 Dead, right? I don't know if that's Epic. I don't think so.
No, bloody hell, I always forget the name. But anyway, it's like a shooter, but it's really, really famous though. And it was just like a multiplayer game that you just had to shoot other people and survive by building stuff and that sort of stuff. And they've taken they want to become more like Roblox, and they're sort of enabling creation, their community to create stuff within the game itself. And now you're seeing loads of people creating loads of different maps and loads of different challenges. And it feels like Yuga might have kicked that off, in the sense that brands, not just Web3, but brands are now starting to realize that actually we can co-create with our communities, with our most loyal fans, and that sort of thing. And I think, like, when I mention AI, it's like technology is advancing the way to make it more accessible for your average Joe to create and experience a game or whatnot. But yeah, it is. I think it is something that is definitely kicking off. And on the point of Adidas, it's. I think I read your post. Did you do a post around this? I think I did read your post.
Yeah, I did both of my posts last week, where actually it wasn't intentional, but just Adidas kept announcing more information and details about how they were rolling out their new collection, the alts. So I happened to write about it both times with both of my posts last week.
Yeah, so I think I saw it, like a little breakdown of what you get for the NFT, and it's pretty incredible how the IP play as well. It's insane how an NFT owner could just create stuff around, and the mind just wonders, like, can you create shoes? Can you create a clothing brand? Can you create, like, all this sort of stuff? And it's just incredible how this is just happening. And there was another point I want to make, but it slipped my mind because I'm still trying to think of the name of the game.
No, all good. I mean, I do want to and I haven't thought about it in this way before specifically.
Fortnite.
Yeah, what's the game? Oh, you're just saying Fortnite in general? Oh, yeah. Oh, no, that is the game from Epic Games. I thought there was like another title. But yeah, Fortnite. No, of course. Yeah, so they launched, I think it was It was at GDC, I believe, a few weeks ago, or like the timing was around then, at least. I might be mistaken, but I think it's the Unreal. They created basically a much more creator friendly and collaborative sort of platform based on Unreal Engine, which is Epic Games sort of software to help developers create all these games, high quality graphics, assets, all that fun stuff. And yeah, it's mind boggling. Like the average person like you or me, maybe a little bit more talented or experienced than you or me, but you could create your own maps, and there's like, you can sort of customize certain things where, even an example, I still remember the presentation because like it was crazy hyped, and it was pretty mind boggling even for the average person just to see what could be done. You could use their tools to create sort of smart placement of CPUs, or sort of like enemies, right? So you're like going through a map, and based on how the players sort of interact with the map, ideally you would put these CPU enemies like at specific locations. Or if the user is like a super high skill level, and the map could sort of determine that user's skill level just based on how they're moving, how they're doing, how many enemies they've shot down, etc. Like the map could dynamically adjust the difficulty for that. Like that's freaking crazy. But that's also that's the technology on the platform, but it just shows how collaborative not only the technology could be, but Epic Games providing that platform could be collaborative with the creators as well, right? And then who wins at the end of the day? The consumers, but also Epic Games, but the creators get more bought into the platform too, right? So if you take that, translate that to Yuga Labs, what they're doing, Nike, Adidas, I think definitely plenty of other Web3 native brands who have provided those types of rights in various forms. That's just a win-win-win. But I also want to take a step back, outside of Web3 and IP ownership, or commercial rights or IP rights, thinking about how variations of that already happen, right? And maybe not at scale, like I want to start a burger joint, or I'm going to create a hotel brand with my Bored Ape or my NFT. More specifically, when you think about well-respected brands, especially those on social media, what do you have from a marketing or growth standpoint? You have UGC, user-generated content, right? So in that type of content, you aren't necessarily like, yeah, this is, like, here's my special Nike NFT or like my thing. But like, there are people who might buy, for example, using Nike because it's super easy as an example, like they might buy sneakers and they're reviewing the products, or they're like, look at this on feet. I'm going to walk down the street and see how many people like give me compliments, right? So that's already a variation of co-creation, right? It's a very one-sided version of co-creation because you're not necessarily giving the creator any tools, right? They're using sort of general like Snap or TikTok or YouTube or whatever. But like there's a version of co-creation in a very asynchronous way. They buy your product, they create content from that. Maybe they monetize, maybe it's for clout, maybe they're just starting off, maybe they just really love your brand. But that's a version of co-creating. What's another version of that actually? So taking it a step further, many brands, consumer especially, they partner with influencers, right? You pay them a certain amount of money, or you might compensate them with your product so that they could create content with it, right? They talk about it. They sort of show, hey, I really like this makeup brand. I'm using it, hashtag sponsor, whatever. And then they sort of promote it, but hopefully they also give their honest feedback about it, and hopefully it's good, right? So even influencer marketing is co-creation, right? You don't call it that, but you're already seeing all these sort of, baby versions, these sort of elementary school versions of that, co-creation in the sense that we're seeing now, much more in-depth, more rich, even getting to the point of legal saying, hey, we could actually let our community use these assets that are owned by us to a degree, in these specific ways. Not every single way, but a lot of ways, right? So this is like the college or graduated version of that. So, when you think about it, it's actually not completely new. It's just presented in a more novel and richer way that hasn't been allowed, for lack of a better word, than in the past.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a deeper layer of, or like another layer of like co-creation or collaboration. But yeah, it's definitely interesting nonetheless. I'm looking forward to seeing, what people do with their alts, and with everything else with the Yuga side as well. I'm pretty sure it's something that's going to kick off in the as in brands will most likely do this more often. But yeah, let's move on to this concept that you minted on your Substack. It's the X to mint concept. Can you explain that and how you thought about it, and basically why people should be thinking about it in this way?
Yeah, definitely. So this really initially stemmed from a few different pieces that I wrote over the past couple of months around what I specifically caught. There are definitely a few different efforts around scan to mint, right? So taking a step back, we all, especially those that are in the Web3 space, understand what minting is, right? You sort of click a few buttons and you're able to mint a NFT, aka you create and sort of establish on the blockchain an asset, a collectible, something that you sort of cement on that blockchain, and now it's yours. Typically, it would be yours if you mint something, right? So, for lack of better word, I'm trying to think of the best Web2 comparable. Let's say you go to Amazon and you need to buy, I don't know, let's say a screwdriver, right? Again, this is an example. It does not work exactly this way, but the seller is like, okay, I need to create that screwdriver and then ship it over. Yay. Actually, that's sort of a version of drop shipping, if that's exactly how it's done. But won't get into details on that. So basically that's you minted, quote unquote, a screwdriver. Not literally, but that's sort of providing a parallel. So, that's a standard way of minting, and that's still how it more or less has been done. For forever on the blockchain with digital collectibles, etc. However, we're starting to see more unique ways to sort of unlock the ability to actually mint, hence X to mint, right? So going back to scan to mint, a simple example, actually pretty popular example from the Super Bowl was with Limit Break. So Limit Break is a gaming company, a Web3 gaming company specifically. A lot of the team, the CEO, the co-founders actually came from the mobile gaming space. So they're very experienced in gaming. So I have some light familiarity with their background, where they came from, things like that, because I used to work in gaming as well. And on the largest US live TV stage of the year, which is the Super Bowl, watched by over 100 million people live every year, which is insane. They had a TV commercial. And what was that TV commercial that they paid, I believe, around $6.5 million for? It was almost just 30 seconds of a QR code, right? And it says scan now. And then there's these little, characters that are like attacking the treasure chest, hoping a ton of people would scan it. And if you scanned it, what happened? If you were early enough or fast enough, it took you to a website where you mint the NFT. And if you sold it immediately, it was actually valued at 0.6 ETH, which is like pretty crazy, give or take, which was, I think at the time, maybe about $800, $900, which is pretty wild. And then if you weren't fast enough, you scanned the QR code and it just took you to like sort of a website saying, unfortunately, you weren't successful. And then it took you to the CEO's Twitter page, which a lot of people were unhappy about because they're like, what the hell is this? Is this just like a social marketing play? Why would you spend millions of dollars, et cetera, et cetera? So a lot of people, whether you're in the space or whether you're just like a person that was watching the Super Bowl and trying to scan this thing, like probably confused, were unhappy. Right. So they're unhappy because it made Web3 look bad. They're unhappy because like a lot of people ended up on, Gabriel Layden, the CEO's Twitter page, like, what the hell? That's really weird. A ton of other reasons, right? Like it wasn't effective, right? How would this even onboard people? But there were a lot of reasons, from in my understanding and my belief, and also the CEO did mention in different sort of various outlets and places afterwards, they were regarding what they were trying to do, right? They were trying to understand, okay, can this work smoothly with 100 million people watching and maybe like hundreds of thousands or a million people even participating in this? Nothing broke, right? That's really good. But also, and to the point of why we're talking about that, they were exploring a new sort of interaction model. So X to Mint is really just an interaction model. So it's building upon the sort of standard. You click on a thing and then you mint the thing. You might pay a little bit of gas to put the transaction on the blockchain, so it lives there forever. But what they're doing now with Scantiment is changing that interaction model. So hypothetically, right, that happens in Web 2 as well. So if you actually look at TV commercials, you can scan QR codes. You can scan QR codes on a lamppost at a busy intersection. You see that in big cities, right? You scan a QR code, or you're at a bus stop, right? Just to learn more information. You scan a QR code at a restaurant, to get the menu if they don't have, paper menus, right? You can scan to view menu, right? So it doesn't have to be mint, but in the case of Web3, we're having different interactions that lead to that outcome to get the NFT, right? So with X to Mint and that sort of general framework, what could happen in the future, right? Maybe you have to follow someone's Twitter account. Maybe you actually have to tweet out something in order to get a special link for you, and then you get to mint the thing, right? Maybe you need to show that you have done something in real life, like you need to purchase to mint. You need to purchase a physical item to get the NFT, which could unlock something special, right? So with this new interaction model, it actually unlocks a whole new set of new capabilities. It's also a data play to a degree, depending on what you want to do. It keeps things fresh as well, right? Because at the end of the day, marketing, growth, new products, it's all about creating more attention. It's about providing entertainment. It's providing a new way to get people to do a certain thing, because at the end of the day, we like to be surprised and delighted and do other things in new ways. So I'm very curious to see what happens with the X to Mint model, whether it's scanning QR codes, where I think there's a lot more potential there. Safety will be very important in regards to making sure people don't scan something and it leads to something that's not true or a scam or something like that. But I believe the X to Mint model will start getting to get to a point of proliferation in more creative and unique ways.
Yeah, I think the way you break it down is it's just so simple to understand. It makes me wonder. We mentioned creators and Fortnite creator mode. And it really is like the sky is the limit, isn't it? Because you could literally create an experience and a gamified. And in fact, that's what Yuga Labs did, right? They did a Dookie Dash, and they called it a skill-based mint. But that is a very simple like 2D game. But you could literally create like a metaverse experience or something to just make the mind wander and be as creative as you can with it. And just make the minting process like very, very fun or very, very engaging, or basically the sky is the limit. So yeah, it's very interesting. And then another point on the scamming, I absolutely agree. I feel like there should be some sort of, whenever you interact with anything that you need to sign, or whenever your wallet needs to interact with anything, I feel like there should be some sort of sticker or some sort of certification that says this was like audited by Certic or whatever. Which I think might make it a friendlier UX for people that are not used to. In fact, earlier today, I read a tweet saying that some guy that had 500 ETH and he bought it like 4 years ago, didn't move it, didn't stake it, didn't do anything with it. He interacted with a smart contract and it was all gone, which is pretty insane.
Man,
I know it is pretty insane. It's pretty insane. But no, yeah. I digress. Going back to this X Mint concept, it's like the possibilities are endless. And in fact, we're at Vamp, we're toying with the idea of, because we make games, of attempting to do something similar to what Yuga did, but related to our games. And we want to get like really, really creative with it. I can't say much just yet because we're releasing stuff. We're releasing stuff sometime next month. But yeah, keep your eyes open for that.
Noted.
But yeah, let's talk about the one-to-one NFTs, because you did a piece around. I think it came out today or the day before. But it was a piece around Nakamigos, and if you burn, I think you said the NFT or a set of NFTs, you get like an NFT that people don't know what they're going to get, but the actual NFT that the person got was like great because it was like a collab with the Gremplin, he's like a famous
Yep.
artist. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So that is based on a set of new features from Manifold. So Manifold is sort of a creator platform allowing creators and just general folks in the Web3 ecosystem to create minting capabilities on a much more scalable and also just an easy to use way. Because historically, let's say, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, several years ago, it was really hard to just like launch a collection, right? Whether because you're an artist or you're just playing around, especially if you're non-technical. So Manifold is one of these companies and platforms among many now, which is super cool to see. There's so many tools now for creators and just companies and individuals to make that process easier. So one of the things that they did was they created and added a lot more features to their burn to redeem functionality. So historically, you could sort of mint on Manifold, and then you could do something called burn to redeem or burn redeem, which is you had to take one NFT or one token from that collection, and then you had to burn it, which is basically you had to destroy it, for lack of a better word, or simple oversimplifying, but you had to destroy it, you had to burn it, and then you get a new asset from that collection, right? Or a new token from that collection. So last week, or about a week and a half ago, as well as last week, they had some more updates to that. So instead of doing specifically that, which is somewhat limiting, now they could, you could actually choose any contract. So, using a collection we've already mentioned, let's say I wanted to create a new collection through Manifold. I could say, you have to burn a Bored Ape from Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Which is, you probably shouldn't do that for many, if any things, right? Like, be very careful if someone tells you to do that. But like, I could require someone, they have to burn that in order to redeem one of my NFTs or tokens, right? So that's very new, right? And that's also permissionless because that historically is a very different interaction. This isn't your collection. I could say you just need to burn that Nike NFT. You need to burn, Cool Cats, which is my profile picture, or something else in order to redeem, this new thing. So what one of these artists did, Gremplin, was he created a collection where you had to burn a Nakamigos, which over the past 2 to 3 weeks has been one of the most popular collections, in the NFT space. So that was a collection with a max supply of 69, and that was redeemed. People, that was fully minted, burned, and redeemed. And what people got in return was a special piece from Gremplin, right? And then what another artist did in collaboration with Gremplin was they basically put out a tweet saying you have to burn one of those pieces, and that collection was called Fry Harvesters, just based on French fries. Not sure why, they just had a weird sort of obsession with French fries during that sort of period and that activation, and that was only for one. Right. So you had to burn this already burned piece, right? So it went from a Nakamigos, which is collection of 10,000, 69 of them were burnt for 69 editions of this Fry Harvesters, excuse me. And then there's a new collection where you had to burn one of those 69 for a new piece. And this was by an artist called Colombo, J. Colombo. And it was later revealed for the lucky person or the brave person that decided to do that. It was actually a one-of-one piece in collaboration between Colombo and Gremplin, right? So that was a very interesting use case of this new feature where you can permissionlessly burn and redeem from a different collection. And then that collection initially was doing the same feature, right? It was from a different artist, sort of taking from the collection from Gremplin, but with a big reveal, it was actually revealed that Gremplin had a part in that and was aware that was going to happen. But it doesn't they don't have to be aware. That's just part of the sort of process with art, and the fact that you own that token and you could hypothetically do whatever you want with it, right? If you wanted to burn it. So that's sort of interesting in regards to how one of ones are starting to have a new sort of unique way of being created, right? So you could say, hey, burn this Bored Ape Yacht Club, and let's say I'm a famous artist, my pieces typically sell for, $100,000 or $500,000 a pop. I could say, hey, I'm using this manifold feature, burn this Bored Ape Yacht Club to get a special one of one from me. It's not even like, hey, I'm auctioning off a one of one. Here's like a piece that I've created, but it could be something else. Like you have to burn something or give up something to get a new thing, right? Sounds crazy, but that's also why artists are embracing this new feature earlier on, because, with art, I think just it's a little more generally accepted that, creation can come from destruction or burning. And that's one of the things I mentioned related to that last week, where there's more openness to that versus in sort of a consumerist mindset. You don't really think about like, oh, I need to destroy this thing to get a new thing. Like, I just want more things. I just want to buy all the sneakers in the world, or I want to, collect all the Pokemon cards. Like, I don't want to burn a Pokemon card to get another one, right? But again, it's digital as well. So it makes it a little bit more flexible. And you're able to do more innovative, creative things because of that flexibility. So that was a pretty interesting example and activation by a couple of artists in the space, and also with Manifold's sort of new feature.
Yeah, I'm wondering how brands can, because you're right, it is very suited to artists, and like it's very degen that you have to get rid of like an NFT to get this one-to-one NFT. But obviously, it's like it's a gamble because you don't know whether you're going to get a good thing or a bad thing, unless or you are aware who the collab is with. Yeah, no, I'm wondering how brands are going to use this feature in the future to create awareness, create hype, and that sort of thing. I guess we'll see. Moving on to another one of your articles, and this is another concept that I think you came up with, and it's about cool cats. And the blackout event. I didn't know that this event happened until I read your Substack. And you clearly explained that there was like a divergence and convergence between different sort of events that are happening. Could you explain a little bit about the Cool Cats blackout event, and can you go into detail about how, if you know, like why they did what they did and how it was successful for them?
Yeah, definitely. So in regards to, and just to be clear, this happens, this isn't like a brand new concept, right? However, I think it's more emphasized, and there's a little bit more of a playground and more space to be creative with these concepts in Web3, because it's primarily digital first and online first. And like we already mentioned, with the concept of like burning something to get something, that's just easier to do with something that's digital only or digital first, versus like you need to literally burn a pair of sneakers to get a new pair of sneakers. Like that's just not really great. Although that could be interesting, if there was, Nike did something like that, that'd be pretty crazy. But so going to Cool Cats. So Cool Cats is another sort of, leading, might be, depending on who you ask, might not be a leading brand in the space, but I'd say well-respected brand in the space. That was one of the first sort of NFT communities I was exposed to, and hold near and dear to my heart just because of my personal sentiment towards it. But they basically had a blackout event, and how this really came about was really interesting, and how they sort of, continued along with that story. So every week, Klon, who's the lead artist and co-founder of Cool Cats, the brand and collection, has a live Twitch drawing session. So, from those sessions, they're actually pretty popular because just there's been characters created from those sessions, last year, that are now a prominent part of the sort of lore today. It's just fun. It's Klon. He's a great guy. He's the lead artist. Like his story, even getting into Web3 and what he did with what he calls Blue Cat, which was the predecessor of Cool Cats, is just amazing. Like he was selling his art at flea markets. No one cared. And like several years later, here he is today with one of the leading and most, recognizable figures in the Web3 space, the Blue Cat of Cool Cats. So he, had his weekly stream. You could tell something probably was going to happen, and they were like, giving away Cool Cats during the stream. So that's like valuable for a lot of different reasons. So it was definitely a large audience that was tuning in this time, including myself. And I think about 30 minutes in or a little while in, Klon started drawing, interacting with the audience. And then suddenly it was very smooth. It was a super smooth transition, but basically it transitioned to a video. So it was live to Klon playing, probably pressed a button. It was practice, so it looked very smooth. And then sort of like this black hole sort of appeared into the middle of the screen. And then this video started playing, sort of hijacking the stream, right? And that sort of kicked off this new event that's still ongoing, but like getting towards a conclusion of this next chapter for Cool Cats, and slowly introducing a new character in that Cool Cat story and lore. So the reason why this is super interesting and why it's related to the concept of convergence and divergence is because of the reality that online communities are oftentimes pretty disparate, right? So they're divergent in the sense that I could go into the Cool Cats Discord at any time I want to. I could interact with the Cool Cats Twitter account whenever I want. I could post content about Cool Cats, or do what I could buy or sell my Cool Cats, whenever I choose and please, right? So pretty asynchronous and divergent experience. However, there's a convergence when it comes to, community events, town halls, right? When announcements are being made, even IRL. So for example, at NFT NYC, which just happened, you can, go to an event hosted by that community, right? It's a convergence of people who share, similarities in community in terms of values, in terms of culture, right? We talked about community and culture as well. So when you think about that from a growth and marketing standpoint, where are the moments? Where are the events? Where are the announcements or activations in the case of Cool Cats Blackout activation, where you have that convergence? Because when people share that experience together at the same time, so it was live, even though it was streamed, it was live, they leave and sort of spread the word of what happened when they were together, right? So then what actually quickly happened afterwards, and the team sort of knew what would happen because there's been other examples in the past of this with other collections, communities, activations, is they quickly, in probably a span of definitely less than an hour, but probably minutes, they started creating hashtags that everyone would be posting. They changed their profile pictures to a very specific type of profile picture and background, right? They encouraged the whole community to change their background to that and use the hashtags and like participate in a little bit of like a scavenger hunt, within the Discord, but also out on Twitter, right? So as you know, with social media, that helps a ton. Discord helps internally with the community as well, with getting people excited. And so other people started to understand what was going on, get interested. News outlets that were focused on Web3 as well as NFT space started catching on, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like that's something that's just so sometimes regarded as more basic for, a standard Web2 brand, that it's oftentimes overlooked, because you have more resources, or maybe like you just hit up your PR contacts and be like, hey, we're launching this new thing. It's embargoed until tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern time, and then you could write about it, et cetera. But that's very different than if you get your community in on it, and your community is the journalists, your community is the PR, your community is the marketing team, your community team is the influencers going to the broader audience, right? It's more of an algorithm game versus, one person with 200,000 followers, you go to, 50,000 of your followers and have them tell 2, 3, 10 people. So yeah, convergence and divergence is very interesting in a physical space and a digital space. in the, all the different ways that goes about. So there's going to be a lot more of that comes, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the concept, because I often feel like projects themselves want either convergence. So convergence is when everyone is together and doing this common thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I feel like projects are or just Web3 organizations or brands are too focused on having too much convergence all the time, and I don't think that is healthy, and I don't think that is obviously sustainable. And I feel like there should be a good balance between the two, if you see what I mean. And
Yep.
I speak to projects all the time where, for example, they want their community super active 24/7, and it's, I mean, some people live in Australia, some people live in the US, some people live in Europe, and it's just not going to happen. And I've heard other growth leaders speak about this, in the sense that you should find times within your week, or within the week, to bring everyone together, and to bring and to collaborate, and that sort of thing. And I think this concept makes it a lot more simple to understand, that it is okay not to have an active community on a Monday afternoon or a Tuesday afternoon or whatever. But you just have to find the good balance between between the two, don't you? Yeah, so let's go into last bit, because we've got 6 minutes left. Announcement velocity. You did an article around Yuga Labs and the way they announced product after product after partnership after partnership. And I think when we first spoke on Google Meets, you said that the announcement velocity of Yuga Labs products and partnerships was just like hitting people with one announcement straight after the other, straight after the other. Can you explain that a little bit, and why it worked?
Yeah. So, like you said, yeah, great overview with the general concept. Literally, announcement velocity is a thing, right? So, not quite a thing in more traditional settings, like again, just thinking about Web2 brands, or thinking about, let's say, a public company like Apple. When they do announcements, their announcements are very notable. They're very large. They even have conferences dedicated to it, right? WWDC, Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple, once a year. Big event in the fall. When they announce iOS 17, for example, that's the next operating system on mobile, lots of speculation, lots of announcements, things like that. But they don't necessarily have an announcement every week, or like a few every month, things like that, right? It's much more concentrated. It's much more thoughtful, a lot more careful. Again, they're a public company. They have different considerations. Even like, a direct-to-consumer clothing brand, right? They don't necessarily have big announcements. They usually sort of have smaller micro announcements, for lack of a better word, of like, hey, we have new clothing from H&M, or this brand, that brand, the North Face, etc., right? Or like, we have a sale, right? Yeah, that's an announcement, but that's just like part of marketing strategy, remarketing, retention. You have a Black Friday sale, right? Something like that. So not quite announcements, but in the Web3 space, it is very attention driven. The war on attention is a very real thing. And with what Yuga Labs does, and every brand and company and project sort of does this, similarly, but also quite differently too. Yuga Labs is generally a little quieter, but when they announce something, it's like an announcement. It gets people excited. Again, they've been much more established than many other folks. They've been around for over 2 years, which is a lifetime in this space, believe it or not. And so when they announce something, it carries weight, right? Also, just because they have a notable and diehard group of fans, and a very strong community. So what they've done and what they've built to this point has allowed them the luxury of creating something that I've dubbed announcement velocity, right? You could have a pretty big announcement on Monday, and that could go, and then you could announce something related or completely different on Tuesday, and another one, let's say on Thursday, and then over the weekend, several days later, let's say on a Sunday morning or Sunday night, another big announcement, right? And that's actually what Yuga Labs did, and what I highlight in that piece, which is quite rare for pretty much anyone in the space and just in general, right? So what they're able to do with that is build velocity, basically suck the air out of the room in terms of attention, and also generate a lot of excitement, social media virality. Every publication is talking about them. So that's what I mean by velocity. It just starts snowballing, right? Because like one announcement from Yuga is already a big deal. Everyone's going to write about that. Two announcements back to back, the next day is an even bigger deal. People are just going to start talking about them again. And then let's say I didn't check Twitter today, but I check it tomorrow. I'm like, wait, they announced something else? Wait, what did they announce? I go back to yesterday, right? So that actually, creates a different type of sort of momentum that many people cannot replicate, because maybe that's not the way they do things, to the reality that they don't have that type of firepower, for lack of a better word. Or, and this is one key advantage and something that Yuga has built to this point that makes it very hard to replicate as well, they don't have large enough of a portfolio to do that with, right? Because many of the announcements that Yuga had during that week a few weeks ago was actually related. One was related to partnerships. Another one was related to other side. It was actually a second play test of their sort of other side metaverse. Another one was related to a couple days later was related to a new collection based off the other side called Legends of the Mara, right? And then the partnership announcement was with Gucci, right? Then they actually announced that they would be releasing a physical Gucci pendant that would also be digitally reflected on the NFT. So like, I'm just rattling off these announcements, not in a very specific order, but like that happening in a week just sucks the air out of the room with attention, gains momentum. Everyone has at least some degree of awareness if you're in the space. So I think that's very much a thing to think about from a marketing strategy as well as tactic when you're talking about attention, getting people excited, and also just showing that you're sort of the big leader in the space. So a lot to learn from, not something that could be exactly replicated though. So something to be thoughtful about. But I think there is a lot to learn from in regards to how that could be done and how you could sort of leverage that to your advantage when it comes to getting more attention and excitement from your community and those around you.
Yeah, I think it's you mentioned it there, it's about sucking the attention out. And it feels like you said, it was like a snowball effect, and it has a momentum, and the way that the velocity brings up the momentum and the size of the snowball, which is something that we might be trying in May, because we have a few things coming out on the Vem Studio side. But yeah, it was amazing having you. I like to end the podcast by asking guests if there's any topic that they would like to learn more about, which I should cover next. Can you think of any?
Oh, yeah. So on my side, would love to learn more about. I'd be curious to learn more about the affiliate space in Web3. I just haven't spent as much time, and affiliates are, not necessarily the sexiest thing, but I think doing affiliate on chain has a lot more reliability. It's much more deterministic than probabilistic, and just understanding how that would even work on chain and who's really doing that well, and how that could benefit creators, how that could benefit all different people in the ecosystem from a consumer standpoint, the sort of publisher or the person who drives that business, as well as the business themselves. Yeah, there's always a better version of a solution out there when it comes to blockchain tech or on-chain tech.
It's funny you say that, because I've actually got someone that I'm planning to reach out to who is building or has built an affiliate on-chain affiliate program tool, which anyone can use, and it's white labeled, so you can brand it to however you want. So yeah, I'm actually that's yeah, it's not a bad idea. I'm gonna give the person a shout. Nice. And I'll let you know when the podcast episode comes out. But yeah, where can people get in touch with you or find out more about you?
Yeah, definitely. So my Substack is TPan, TPAN.substack.com. I write twice a week. I used to write 5 times a week, but for my sanity, I cut it down to 2 in the new year and moving forward. Twitter is TPan_Web3. Feel free to follow, feel free to DM me if you have any questions or whatnot. I'm happy to just share everything I'm learning. It's always been a good time on that front. And if you're looking to learn more or read more about Web3 marketing or growth, hopefully I could be a helpful resource on that front.
Awesome, wonderful. Well, thank you for coming. I'll leave all your details in the show notes so people can easily have access to your Twitter and your Substack and all that good stuff. And yeah, thanks for coming, man. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a review on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to. And, as this really helps the show. But yeah, thank you for coming, TPan.
Likewise, thank you for having me, Estefano.